Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Alpha Staff webinar series. Today's webinar is Anti-Harassment Training, Non-California version with Salvatore Ululati from Alpha Staff. Before we begin, I'd like to address a brief technical overview. As you may have noticed, all attendee phone lines are muted and will remain so throughout the presentation. If you have any questions, please send them via chat or the Q&A feature. We will address as many questions as we can by the end of the presentation. Attendance in today's live webinar is approved for 1 credit with both HRCI and SHRM. At the end of the presentation, I'll share the contact information needed to request your credit. Today's presenter, Salvatore Ululati, has over 15 years of HR experience in the PEO industry. Prior to Alpha Staff, he worked over 15 years in the banking industry, and he currently holds both PHR and SHRM CP certifications. Sal, it's an honor to have you with us this morning, and I now turn the presentation over to you.
Thank you very much, Kim, for the presentation, and good afternoon, everyone. And I thank you for attending this presentation here on anti-harassment training for today. Before we dive into the presentation, I would like to give some friendly reminders here. This is a safe environment for questions, that there are no dumb or silly questions here. You know, we don't know what we don't know. And the reason why we're here is so that way we can expand on our knowledge or actually understand what harassment is. I also kindly ask that you please maintain confidentiality. Meaning that if you do have something that you want to bring to our attention, to please do not mention actual names or situations that may have happened, but more of a hypothetical cases for that matter. The other thing is that you may not agree with everything that is going to, but again, you know, the purpose of this training is for you to understand what your responsibilities may be, and to actually how to educate, you know, managers and employees on how to effectively respond to harassment and create a safe workplace for that matter. And also to, we'll be reviewing some laws that you should be aware of as well in regards to harassment. All right, next, please. So what is our goal for today? Well, our goal for today is that we want to let the employees know and understand that our companies are firmly committed to maintaining a workplace which is harassment-free and discrimination-free, and that it also does not tolerate retaliation for that matter. You know, we want employees understand that, number one, every employee is treated with dignity, fairness, and above all, respect. You know, whether you're the CEO of the company or whether you're the file clerk of the company, it really makes no difference. Everybody deserves respect for that matter, because we are all human beings. Now, and the importance also of teamwork here in regards to harassment. Harassment is not just something that starts from the top down, meaning from our CEO down to the frontline people, but it also goes the other way around, you know, from the frontline people all the way up to the CEO. It's a group effort that we must maintain here to be sure that we eliminate or don't have any kind of harassment or discrimination within the workplace, and that we're trying to make it a safe workplace for all, you know. And above all, you know, we are all responsible, no matter who we are within the company, that we must set the tone that this is the kind of environment that we want. All right, next, please. All right, so what is our agenda for today? Well, we're going to be going through some definitions and some examples. We'll be discussing also, you know, how to prevent and report harassment. What can we do to promote a safe environment? You know, how to maintain compliance, because again, harassment, discrimination, retaliation, you know, these are all sensitive things, and we want to be sure that we're doing the right thing here, and that we understand what our rights and responsibilities may be. And then we're also going to go through some managers' responsibilities as well, because again, the managers here are that front line people that are responsible for not only for the safe being of the employees that we manage, but we're also responsible for the safe being of the company that we work for. So we have double responsibilities here, being in the middle between staff and company. And again, there are also a lot of pointers here which can also be viewed for the employees as well, as far as what their responsibilities are in harassment. Next. So before we go in, the first thing I would like to discuss here is federal non-discrimination laws. And as you see here, we've got four different laws that have been enacted at different times. We have the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which is better known as Title VII. We have the Age Discrimination Act, which is also known as the Age Discrimination and Employment Act, or the ADEA for short. And we have the Pregnancy Discrimination Act. And then last, we have the American with Disability Act. Now, just to give a little background on these laws, why were these laws actually enacted? And the main reason why these laws were enacted or created was to pretty much level the playing field between employers and employees, or prospects for that, or even prospect employees, where basically these laws are sort of enforcing employers to consider only objective job-related criteria in making employment decisions. So basically what this is saying is that, if we are going to hire a person, a new person, or if we are going to provide a promotion to an employee, or transfer, or give them a pay raise, that we don't look at this person solely basically on their gender or their race or their national origin, but strictly, basically, we should only base ourselves off of the credentials and the experience and the knowledge that they may bring to us in a company. Looking at, basically, we need to look at their resume as far as what we need to do as far as our hiring decisions. So going here and just giving a little explanation of what these laws are and what they do. The Civil Rights Act of 64, or better known as Title VII, basically it protects employees against discrimination based on certain specified characteristics, such as race, color, religion, sex, or national origin, for that matter. So basically, we're basically saying that we cannot discriminate employees based on these items here. But so this is a way that it took a lot of those factors away from the client, from the employer, to discriminate against employees, right? Next law that we have here, the Age Discrimination Act, or also the Age Discrimination and Employment Act, known also as the ADEA. The Age Discrimination and Employment Act, it involves treating applicants or employees less favorable because of their age. And this law was also enacted also because in the Civil Rights Act, it didn't mention anything about age. So now we added this other law, another layer here, where it doesn't allow employers to discriminate because of age. And the Age Discrimination Act is for those employees that are over the age of 40, where basically, again, allow that playing field between these employees or prospects that may be somewhat older than younger employees that we may be looking at. And then we have the Pregnancy Discrimination Act of 1978. Basically, the Pregnancy Discrimination Act amended Title VII in a way that it provided that pregnant women are treated the same as other employees or other disabled employees. So basically, it forbids discrimination based on pregnancy when it comes to any aspect of employment, such as hiring or firing, promotions, pay raises, etc. So, we can't, so because a woman is pregnant, we cannot discriminate against them just because they're pregnant. But again, we have to look at them for the value and the requirements that they may meet, that we may need as far as making our decision and hiring a person. Lastly, we have the Americans with Disability Act, also known as the ADA. The ADA basically prohibits discrimination against people with disabilities. So what is a disability? So how is the ADA define a disability? Basically, what it says is a disability is a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. So again, we cannot discriminate against a person because they may be handicapped or whatever their disability may be. But again, sometimes I do get questions like this where people, some of my clients will ask me, like about the American Disability Act. And basically, the ADA does not interfere with your rights to hire the best applicant, nor does it impose any affirmative action plan that you may have that you may need to abide by. So basically, the ADA basically just simply prohibits you from discriminating against a qualified candidate because of their disability. It doesn't mean that because you find a person that has a disability in front of you that you feel obligated to have to hire this person if that person is not the best qualified applicant that you may be looking for. All right. So this is basically what these 4 laws are. These are the laws that basically we always follow when we come to non-discrimination, such as harassment or discrimination in itself. Next, please. All right. I just want to touch a little bit just slightly on retaliation. That retaliation is illegal, and retaliation, in a way, has become the major or most frequently filed claim with the EEOC, even more so than harassment or sexual harassment or per se. And the reason this is happening is because when there is a complaint filed out there from an employee that comes forward with a complaint for harassment, unfortunately, either known to us or unknown to us, whether we do it purposely or not, we don't take the proper actions here to safeguard our employees against retaliation, either from other management team from the company or from the employee or from other employees themselves. So now, because people find out about this, now people start retaliating against this person. So now, not only do we have a harassment suit out there, but now we also have, primarily now we have a retaliation suit. So now we have a double whammy that we need to deal with. So again, if there is any kind of harassment that does come forward to you, make sure that you do take the proper action to safeguard that employees from being retaliated against. Next, please. So protected classes, as I mentioned in the slide where we had the non-discrimination laws, I've mentioned that, it protects discriminating against certain protected classes, such as race, color, national origin, religion, gender, citizenship. But the more classes you have and you throw them into the pot, they also become protected classes as well, such as a marital status, sexual orientation, which today is a big topic that we hear about it very often out there. Age, which again we discussed with the ADEA, disability under the American Disability Act, and any other characteristics that are protected by law also fall within these guidelines. So it basically, these laws encompass a very broad aspect of what the protected classes are. Next, please. All right. So now, just to give it a little definition of what is discrimination. Discrimination is any act or failure to act impermissibly based in whole or in part on a person's protected class that adversely affects privileges, benefits, or other work conditions, and results in disparate treatment or has a disparate impact on employees or applicants. Basically, what this is saying is that we can't discriminate on a person because of what we see, how we see that person, due to their gender or to their race or to their national origin. But basically, we have to, we have to look at the prospect or the employee on their individual merits, what they're actually bringing to the table to allow us to make our hiring decision. You know, anything outside of that is basically now this is discrimination, and this is something we cannot do, right? Or even showing partiality or prejudice towards another person. Again, you know, we may do this unconsciously, where we look at a person and for some apparent reason, you know, it's something that we, you know, right away where we already made up our mind that we're not going to be hiring that person, or we're not going to give them the promotion or the raise or what have you not. So, you know, we can't show we can't be impartial to one person and not be impartial to another person. Everyone needs to be treated the same way. And again, harassment is a form of discrimination, just like discrimination is a form of harassment. Next, please. All right. So now what is harassment? So now we'll explain what harassment is. Harassment comes in many ways, you know, it's, but here we're going to be talking verbal or physical conduct that creates a work environment that a reasonable person would consider to be intimidating, hostile, or offensive, interferes with work performance, adversely affects employment opportunities, it's severe or pervasive. So what does this mean, or what does reasonable person mean for those of us who may not understand what a reasonable person is, or what it means? But reasonable person is a legal term that is often used in cases of harassment, right? In layman terms, it refers to a hypothetical reasonable person with a reasonable way of interpreting or reacting to a situation of harassment. Basically, what that means is, you know, how would another person have acted or reacted if the situation was presented to them, you know? So, so basically, you know, in another way of saying it, that basically the reasonable person standard aims to avoid the potential for parties to claim that they suffered harassment when most people would not find such instance offensive to themselves, or they subject to that act. So basically, another way of saying is, you know, you know, if I were you in your position, how would I feel in that circumstances? Would I actually feel that I was being harassed, or is this something that I just overreacted on a certain situation? So that's what a reasonable person actually means in this case. Right. Next, please. Right. So who can commit harassment? Right. So basically, harassment can be from basically from anyone. I mean, non-management employees, managers, supervisors, co-workers, vendors, and customers and clients. You know, vendors also, it's not just has to be harassment, it's not just within the workplace, but it can also be outside the workplace. You know, vendors, for example, you know, you have your UPS guy, or your FedEx guy, or your Kinko's guy that delivers the copier paper to you. You know, they could come in and, you know, that they could really make life miserable for your receptionist or for anyone else that they may come in contact with. And for those of us who may be in the hospitality or a retail industry, of course, we deal with customers and clients all day long, right? So basically, you know, they too can commit harassment towards us as well. Next. Harassing conduct could include, it's not just sexual, it's not just physical, right? It could be also abusive words or phrases or negative stereotyping, threatening, intimidating, or hostile acts, jokes that demean a protected class, written or graphic material that shows hostility or dislike to an individual or group. You know, sometimes we go out and we see those T-shirts that have that funny writing in the front, which we feel that it's funny. But again, you know, it can be demeaning to certain people, certain classes. So, you know, that again, if you're thinking of wearing a shirt like that in your workplace, I would seriously think about it a second time to be sure to look at it to see, you know, is the shirt going to be harassing a certain group or certain people for that matter. Okay, and then also the jokes. You know, we have millions of jokes out there against different genders, different races, or nationalities. So, you know, let's be careful on the kind of jokes we also say within the workplace. Next, please. Sexual harassment. What is sexual harassment? Well, sexual harassment is unwelcome advances, requests for favors, and other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature, and it is illegal when submission to such conduct is made either explicitly or implicitly as a term or condition of employment. If the submission to or rejection of such conduct by an individual is used as a basis for employment decisions, and if such a conduct has the performance to affect or effect of unreasonable interfering with an individual's work performance, and it creates a hostile or intimidating work environment for that matter. So, so in other words, sexual harassment, what these 3 bullet points are saying here is that sexual harassment is a form of gender-based discrimination, and it involves unwelcome sexual conduct that it is used as the basis for employment decisions, such as hiring, raises, promotions, firing, and for that matter. And also, because of harassment, it can also causes it can create an intimidating or hostile work environment for that matter. So again, it's not just the actual physical or sexual thing that is that this is not actually that actually what it means. That's not sexual harassment just for sex, but also basically it is used as far as a hiring decision when we're making those kind of decisions internally. All right, next please. Now, sexual harassment, there are 2 parts of sexual harassment here. One is quid pro quo, and the other one is hostile work environment. So, I don't know how many of you out there actually know or have heard of the phrase of quid pro quo, but next slide, please. But quid pro quo, for those of you who may not know or hearing it for the first time, is Latin translated meaning this for that. Usually when a quid pro quo is usually within the context of a supervisor-employee relationship, basically is for promises for opportunities, for promotions, raises, continued employment. And it could also be used on the other end of the spectrum for threats for not complying with that request of that request. So basically, you're going to have your life made miserable at work. I'm not going to give you that promotion. You're not going to get get transferred. Life is going to be miserable. You're going to want to quit. So basically, it's this for that. If you come out with me with dinner for tonight, I'll make sure you get the promotion. So there's, I'll do something for you if you do something for me. So basically, this is where a lot of that sexual harassment comes in. Next, please. Hostile work environment. Hostile work environment. A lot of times, I do receive calls from employees from some of my clients that they feel that they're being harassed. They feel that they're in a hostile work environment. And then when I speak with them and I inquire with them, whatever, and then 99% of the time, it's not a hostile work environment. So to have a hostile work environment, it must be of repeated conduct, comments, or objects that unreasonably interfere with work performance or creates a work environment that a reasonable person, again, we have that reasonable person in here, would find to be intimidating, hostile, or offensive. Again, the key word here is repeated, right? If, for example, you have, an employee goes up, a male employee goes up to a female employee, John goes to Jane and says, hey, Jane, would you come out with lunch with me? Would you come out to lunch with me or maybe have dinner with me? And Jane turns around and says, no, John, I'm not interested. And John walks away. Well, that's not really a hostile work environment. It just ended right there. Again, the key word here is repeated conduct. Now, if John consistently ask Jane day in and day out, 2 and 3 and 4 times a day, then yes, now we're turning this into a hostile work environment, because now it starts to affect Jane, and she basically now she's it may affect her performance. Maybe she stops coming to work and starts calling in sick due to the fact of John consistently harassing her for this. But again, hostile work environment is not just the fact of a verbal request, but also it may also include pictures, offensive jokes, name calling, or even physical assaults for that matter. And when we say pictures, we're mentioning, like, sometimes maybe, I don't know, you may be in a department where you have four male employees and one female, and these guys are all into, bodybuilding, or they're into, these hot, these muscle cars. And normally, when you have these kind of pictures or these kind of calendars, they always come with some kind, with bikini clad women. So maybe the other female that's in your department is going to find this uh, hostile work environment, because day in and day out, she's coming into the office and having to look at these pictures, which to her are demeaning. So that's where these pictures come into, right? And again, it can be in person, it could be through various other communications, giving notes. In today's world, where everybody has a cell phone, we have text messages or even emails for that matter, right? So, again, hostile work environment could be, the major point to remember here is that it has to be a repeated conduct and not just that one-time thing. Next, please. All right. As I mentioned before, we have different types of harassment. We have verbal harassment, we have nonverbal harassment, we have physical harassment, and sexual harassment, of course. So we're going to go through these. We're going to go through these slides, and we're going to give examples of each type of harassment. But before we do, next slide. I just want to give some questions out there and get your feedback to see what you think. Bob asked Shira to go out with him, and she said she's not interested. In your opinion, would this be considered harassment or no? And again, there's no, just answer as you can through the chat. That's fantastic. Yeah. Right. So, okay, seeing how everybody's responding no, and you're absolutely correct. This is not harassment, because we just gave this example before. At one time and it's over, it's done with, right? Raheem overheard Carl telling his coworker, Lara, that she's one hot mama, and he thinks he saw Lara cringe when Carl licked his lips. Do you think that this would be harassment? Right, exactly. You're absolutely correct. This is considered harassment because, again, we're stereotyping here, and we're also doing some kind of sexual movements that we shouldn't be doing, right? Jeannie continues to ask Charla to go out with her, though she has clearly told her that she is not interested, and asked her to stop asking. Would this be harassment? That was quick. I see a lot of answers coming up as yes. And yes, you are absolutely correct. Again, as we mentioned before, the continuing repeated conduct is what dictates here about being harassment, as we mentioned before. Next question. Next slide, please. All right, so here are some examples of verbal harassment, referring to an adult female as a girl, doll, baby, sweetie, or honey. Now, it says here on the slide here, it says female, but it could also be, it could also go for an adult male, because in my work experience, dealing with many different, dealing with many different clients, and also with many different managers, I too have been called sweetie or honey. So it goes both ways, right? Whistling at someone, making sexual comments about a person's body, asking personal questions about a social or sexual life, repeatedly asking out a person who is not interested, telling lies or spreading rumors about a person's personal sex life. Now, spreading rumors is not just about their personal sex life, but I mean, we mentioned sex here because we're talking about harassment and sexual harassment, but just spreading rumors in general is basically uh, a a basis for harassment as well. Right. So if anything like this is happening, or you're doing it because maybe you're being nice with your employees, you just have that habit of calling everybody sweetie. We don't know. We really don't know, and maybe the employee is not saying anything to you because of different reasons. Maybe we may want to stop that behavior and start calling everybody by their names. Next, please. So now here we have some more questions for harassment. And again, I'm kindly asking for your participation. Sharon avoids passing by Sven's cubicle because of how he looks at her. Would this be considered harassment? All right. Okay, well, I see here we have some yeses and some nos. All right. Now, and there is, and both of you are right here, yes or no, because number one, we have to look at, number one, yes, by looking at another person, the way we look at another person, if we look at another person in a sexual way, it definitely would be considered harassment. And again, on a frequent basis, or is this something that just happened that one time and Sharon noticed it and now she's just uncomfortable passing by there? And then again, would that be considered harassment? If it's just that one time thing, no. If it's something that Sven does frequently, every time Sharon passes by, then yes, it can be considered harassment. A few female coworkers like to have their lunch outside, so they can rate their male colleagues as they walk. In particular, enjoys whistling at the guys she likes. Is this harassment? So quite a lot of yeses came up even before I finished the question. Yes, this is definitely harassment. And again, harassment, let's not just think of harassment that is only a male to female, but is also females to male, is between males to males and females to females. So any kind of combination out there, something like this would be considered harassment. All right, last question. We have Lily asked Jared to walk her to her car because another coworker had been following her around the office. And today she saw the employee standing in a dark corner, just staring at her for about 10 minutes. Would this be considered harassment? Yeah, most definitely this is considered harassment because number one, you're staring at a person, you're actually stalking her for that matter, you've been following her around the office all day long, right? Next question, next slide, please. All right. So as the examples we just gave, these would be basically all examples of nonverbal harassment, right? Looking at a person up and down in a sexual manner, as we've mentioned there in our first example. Staring at someone, yes, like that other person was staring at the other employee, coworker in the dark, right? Blocking a person's path, following the person, giving personal gifts, displaying sexual suggestive visuals, making facial expressions such as winking or throwing kisses, or even making sexual gestures with hands or through body movements. So these are all non-harassment, verbal non-harassment items that we really need to not do if we're doing it. They actually need to stop. Next, please. So some more questions after this last slide. AJ has photographs of pretty women on his screensaver. Is this considered harassment? Tough one. Mm-hmm. Right. Again, this one here, a lot of us say no, and a lot of us are saying could be and maybe, and you're absolutely correct, because it all depends on the type of photographs that AJ has on his screensaver. If he has pictures of women, just beautiful women, but they're not in any way demeaning to the female class, because he just likes pretty women, is one thing. If he now has pictures of pretty women on his screensaver, which these women are in bikinis or in other kind of settings, then yes, this can be considered then harassment for that matter, because it is demeaning to the females, to any kind of female coworker that you may have. While Rosa was rushing to the copier to meet a deadline, Steve blocked her. Rosa tried several times to sidestep him around him, but Steve continued to block her. When she asked him to please move out of the way, Steve only moved closer to her, and after putting his hand on his shoulder, said, "I know you don't mean that." Is this harassment? Yes, absolutely correct. Yes, this is harassment, and absolutely this is harassment for that matter, because again, he's prohibiting her from getting in her way for doing her job, and again, putting his hands on her for that matter. So definitely, you cannot block a person for that matter. Janie is one of the 3 people in her department being considered for director position. Janie VP asks her to dinner and mentions he wants to unwind before deciding who to promote. What do you think about this one? Absolutely, you're absolutely correct. This is harassment again, and this particular question here goes back to what we said in the previous slides, the quid pro quo, this for that, right? He's asking her to go out. That way, then he'll make his decision on who's going to get the VP position. So this is definitely harassment. Next slide, please. All right, so now we come here to examples of physical harassment. Giving a massage around the neck or shoulders, touching a person's clothing, hair, or body, hanging on or clinging to a person. That's a little excessive there, but hugging, kissing, patting, or stroking a person. Touching or rubbing oneself sexually around another person, standing close or rubbing up against a person. These are all types of physical harassments. I mean, I can't imagine the bottom 4 happening in an office, but the one that is mostly that I believe will probably happen mostly in an office setting is probably the fact of giving someone a massage on the shoulders or on the neck, for those 2 minutes, and it's they enjoy it for those 2 minutes or whatever the case is. But one thing is, from an HR standpoint, that is really something that should not be happening in the workplace, because again, if it's okay with that coworker of you giving them a massage on their neck for today, tomorrow may not be welcome because for whatever reason they may have. So you don't want to get into a predicament of something where, of you then being charged with harassment for that matter. So this is definitely something that if it is happening, to please stop this behavior. All right, next, please. All right, one other question here for everyone. Since we're on the topic here of harassment, which do you think is most important? What do you think matters the most? Is it your intentions or another person's perception in regards to sexual harassment or harassment in general? Okay, right. I see here we have a little bit of a mix, but a lot of people are saying person's perceptions, and you're absolutely correct. Next slide, please. All right. So going to their intent versus a person's perception. In a court of law, when a judge if it does get to a court of law and you do have it in front of a judge usually will look at 2 things. One, the reasonable person rule, and 2, impact versus intent. Okay. In harassment situations, it is the victim's perception that matters, not the intent of the person displaying the behavior. So just hypothetically here, let's say you have you with 3 other buddies of yours go to the coffee room for your 10-minute break, and you're there and you guys are joking around and saying some jokes and what have you not. And then these the other 2 or 3 employees come in and they're sitting at a different table, and they're overhearing everything that is being said, these jokes or whatever comments that you guys are making, whatever. So now they walk away and they go to HR and complain about this behavior. So now HR calls you in and says, "Hey, we got a complaint here. This is what we heard that you were saying and that you were doing. This behavior needs to cease and stop immediately." So now you come forward and you say, "Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Um, I apologize. I can guarantee you that, me and the other two guys, we weren't actually trying to hurt anyone or demean anyone or offend anyone. We were just talking amongst ourselves and just having, just cracking some jokes for that matter." Well, that's fine, even though you were there, but unfortunately, to the other people that were in that room with you, it was bothersome. It for them, they felt it was demeaning. So basically, in this point, it becomes the victim's perception. And again, the victim's perception doesn't mean that you actually spoke to that person directly. It's the person that was in that area at that time. That's what it means, victim's perception. All right. So again, it's always that. So now, how do we prevent harassment? For preventing harassment is really everyone's responsibility, not just the managers. But since here we're talking about managers, think before you speak and listen to your workforce, right? Make sure you are a role model and not part of the problem. As a manager, you set the tone really of your department. So, when we say think before you speak or listen to your workforce, basically, when we say listen to your workforce, we just don't say it in the actual figurative way of listening to everything that they're saying as they're talking to each other. Maybe, they kid around with each other, what have you not, but also listen to them as a person, to actually know your people, get to know like the culture that they come from, what their background is, because again, we're all different and we have different type of diversities and different type of standards and morals that we go with. So sometimes a certain discussion that's maybe having between two people can be disturbing to that other person that's in your department. So that's what we say when we also mention by listen to your workforce. Again, you are the manager of the department, the supervisor of the department. You need to lead the way. You need to be the role model for your employees to follow, because if you give them a bad example, well, guess what? They're going to do what you do. So if you're not leading the way, but you're part of the problem, then your whole department is a problem. All right. So as a manager, you set the tone, right? So you have to dictate exactly, how far these people could go and how far they can't go, because again, if you're trying to implement or enforce a harassment-free environment, you have to lead the way here to make sure that everybody understands where the company's coming from. So again, be careful with the humor in the workplace. Make sure it doesn't get out of hand. Think about how the actions of how it may impact your other employees. As I mentioned before, to listen to your workforce. And again, most importantly, bystander intervention, report it. Let's not just think, and this goes for employees as well that are maybe listening to this webinar, that if you see or you hear something, it is also your obligation to report it to your management team to be sure that it gets taken care of in a responsible way. So it is not only your manager's responsibility, but employee's responsibility as well. Next. Now, what managers cannot do, we're going to go here to things that managers cannot do and managers can do, what they can do. If you witness harassment or discrimination, you must address it with the offender as soon as possible. You must follow company's procedures and report it to HR. The reason why you need to address this with the offender immediately is because you want to drive the point across that this is something that is serious, it is something that is not tolerated, and that this kind of behavior needs to stop. If instead you saw this happening on Monday, and then you got together with this offender on Thursday, it brings a whole different level of seriousness to this case of discrimination or harassment, right? Because they're saying, well, you're talking to me 3 days later, so how important could it be? So now we're missing the boat here to to make this employer, to this offender understand the severity of their behavior, right? So now, if the offender is unaware, remember, we all react and interact through our own biases. We all interact differently due to our culture, our background, our upbringing. Help the offender understand your policy and how the conduct can be perceived, and also, of course, involve your HR for assistance. Next screen, please. Okay. Now, why don't people report it? Right. There are many reasons why people don't report it, but the major reason that people do not report it is because of fear. And the fear of losing their job, fear of being retaliated against, fear that they're going to be not liked by their coworkers, or for that matter, or also or for the matter that the company is going to look at them as a black sheep of the company, and so basically they hold back for these reasons. So it's up to us as managers to be sure that we iterate the fact that it should be reported, that that no one will tolerate against it, that no one should ever be afraid to report it. Next. So if you see it, report it. Right? Any instances you may see, and whether you're a manager or an employee, report it to your manager, report it to any manager, to any member of management, to your HR representative, or if you have to, but you don't feel comfortable with what's happening internally, you can call Alpha Staff and ask for your HR account manager, and they'll be more than happy to guide you through this thing and tell you exactly what the next steps will be. Next, please. So now we have here, harassment is a big thing. So, many states have come forward and either they have, like such as this case here, many states here, as you can see, the harassment training is recommended, but it's not required. But again, and then we have other states where it is required, but it's required if you are in the state agency or federal agency for that matter. Then we have other states where harassment is mandated, such as these states here. And as you please note the employer size next to each state. So if you're in this state and you have these, and you meet this threshold, please know that you must give a harassment training to your employees. Now, if you don't have one, you're more than welcome to call your HR account manager, and we'll be more than happy to work with you in getting one implemented for that matter. And then, of course, they also have other states that have special requirements, such as New Mexico, where they have primary and secondary education centers that are required to give harassment training. Next. You as a manager have many responsibilities here. You as a manager need to know and understand your harassment policy, and then you also have the responsibility to explain this harassment policy to any new employees that you may get. And also, most importantly, talk about it with your employees on a more frequent basis. I don't know if you have bi-weekly meetings or you have monthly meetings or whatever you may have, to go ahead, and reinforce this policy to them. That way they understand exactly what the policy is and what the reporting procedures may be in case if something does happen and they do have to come forward. Again, do not ignore any kind of conduct that you may think may be harassment or discriminating. And again, as I mentioned before, make sure your employees know how to report harassment, and also reinforce the fact that the company will not tolerate harassment, discrimination, or retaliation for that matter. Thank you. Next. Again, some more responsibilities as a manager. Take every complaint seriously. Do notify HR as soon as possible for assistance and for guidance. And again, if there is any violence, please do call authorities if you have to. Do explain that HR will do an investigation as quickly as possible. So to the person who may report the harassment to you, let them know exactly what the steps are going to be, and how it's going to work, and so that way they are aware exactly of what the company's processes and procedures are. Again, also as your responsibility is to take care now of this employee, to be sure that no one retaliates against them. So do whatever you can, if possible, maybe put them on different shifts or put them in two different corners of the room, something that can alleviate the animosity between these people. Again, do not promise confidentiality, never promise any kind of an outcome, and don't try to handle it yourself. It's always best that you go to HR for assistance because they're usually the experts on this. But most importantly, never promise confidentiality that it's going to be between you and them. In a harassment investigation, it's on a need to know basis. So basically, the people that are going to be involved in this is going to be, of course, the person who reported to you, yourself as a manager, your HR person, and any other people that may be involved in this harassment, any eyewitnesses for that matter. So complete confidentiality is never possible in these kind of situations. Right? Next, please. All right. Your responsibility as a manager, you are required, and we mentioned this before, you're required to report any kind of harassment that are made to you or that you may have observed. You are expected to be the role model for your team and for your company, and you as a manager can be reprimanded and disciplined if you fail to report any kind of suspected sexual harassment or for any kind of retaliation that may be happening, and disciplining can lead all the way up to termination for that matter. So please take this seriously and make sure you do what you need to do as a manager. Next. Question. What can a supervisor do to help employees feel safe reporting discrimination, workplace harassment, and sexual harassment? Next. Right. So here are some answers for you. Set an example of respectful workplace behavior. Again, be the role model. Make them let your employees understand that what the policy is and what the reporting procedures are. Set those expectations straight. Make them understand that this is a safe work environment, that they will not be retaliated against, and that they should feel free to go ahead and report these actions to anyone within the company. Take immediate steps to be sure to stop this kind of behavior. Most importantly, guard against retaliation against that employee that may have come forward to file a formal complaint. Handle the investigation if you're going to be doing it because it maybe came to HR. Do it discreetly and confidentially as possible. And again, try to be as sensitive as possible towards these people because it is a very sensitive thing, and people can feel awkward and they do feel have that fear in them anyway. So again, always try to be very sensitive toward these employees. Next, please. Another question for you, for managers here. If an employee reports harassment to his or her supervisor and says, I don't want you to do anything, just want you to listen and be aware of what's going on, what should you respond to them? Yeah. Okay. So number one, as we mentioned, exactly, you can't do that. You cannot just listen to the employee and not take action, without a doubt. So basically, you as a manager can't just listen and be aware. So basically, as I just stated, you cannot not know about it and not do nothing about it, or promise that employee that you can't do anything about it. As we mentioned before, you as a manager have the responsibility that you must report harassment or discrimination, and you have the obligation of taking action. Why? Because you are that person in the middle there between your company and your staff. You're that buffer, you're that frontline person, you're the eyes and the ears of the company. So basically, you have to ensure that you're doing the right thing to protect the employee and to protect also your company. So you have to take action for that. So again, by doing this, you're ensuring the integrity of the workplace. You're going to be exercising, you're going to try, you do everything in your power to prevent harassment, because if you're showing that you need to report it, and this is something that everyone should be doing, everyone's going to follow your lead, right? And again, report any, okay, and report any type of discriminations or harassment to your HR department without a doubt. All right, next. All right, so to summarize here, it is always best that you as a manager support and enforce a zero tolerance policy. Basically, again, meeting with your people, reinforcing the policies, the reporting processes, reassure them that retaliation will not be tolerated within the company. be aware and address the appropriate behavior as soon as possible. This is a very serious matter. Don't think it's going to go away on its own, or that you have time to deal with it later on, tomorrow, the next day. Keep the harassment-free policy alive by talking about it. As I mentioned in your meetings, please always reiterate it, even if it's those 2-3 minutes, but bring it to, always keep it in their mind, because remember, as the saying says, out of sight, out of mind. And then if something does happen, everybody's running around in circles, not knowing how to report these things, or how to behave. Make sure you get HR involved all the time. And if you are the person doing the behavior, stop and seek help. With this, I just want to mention one thing to you guys. I know we're running out of time here, but for those of you who may not be aware, Alpha Staff has an employee assistance program, an EAP program, which we give to all our clients and to their employees. This program here is definitely something that you may want to use. It is strictly confidential between yourself and the counselor or the therapist or whomever you may be speaking with at this EAP company. Your company will not know about you talking with these people. Neither will Alpha Staff know about the fact that you're talking with these people about any situation you may have, that or problem that you may be seeking assistance with. So if you are interested in this product, kindly reach out to your HR account manager and ask them about the EAP program, and we'll be more than happy to send out the information to you. Next, please. At the end of the day, what it comes down to, as I said in my first slide, it comes down to respect. We need to respect each other, no matter who we are, where we come from, our gender. It makes no difference. Basically, by respecting anyone, we can ensure that we're going to have a harassment-free and a discrimination-free environment. Going to the office is going to be pleasurable. We don't have to look over our shoulders because we have to be afraid of anything. And because of this, productivity will increase, performance will increase. And if you have everybody on board with this, you're sure to have, your company will profit from it tremendously. Next. Okay, so if there are any questions here, I guess Kim will take it from here. And I thank everyone for your time and for attending this webinar. I hope everybody got something out of it. Learn something, or I got some extra tips, because that was our intention. I thank you very much for your time again. Thank you.
Thank you, Sal. So at this time, we are opening the presentation for questions. Again, please use your chat or Q&A feature if you have questions, and we'll get those addressed while we're on the line here. To receive copies of the presentation and your HR certification credits, please contact Alpha Staff's Human Resource Service Center at hrsc@alphastaff.com or via phone at 888-335-9545. And a couple of quick notes. So please join us next Thursday, October 28th, for Staying Healthy Through the Holidays with Priscilla Murphy, from Health Advocate EAP. And then please take a couple of minutes to provide your feedback about today's webinar in a brief survey that will appear as a link once the webinar ends. We do read all the feedback and take your suggestions into consideration as we build out the webinar topics for next year's series. And with that, I don't have any questions, just a lot of thank you, Sal. That was great. So again, we appreciate your time today. Thank you, attendees. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time.